What up, y'all? Tina here. Let's get into some more Jonathan Majors news. So, Variety is reporting that Jonathan Majors has lost the last two projects that he was slated to star in. 48 Hours in Vegas, which is the Dennis Rodman story, and The Understudy, which was going to be distributed by Amazon. Majors was supposed to star and produce the film, and Spike Lee was supposed to direct it. So, before Jonathan Majors got in trouble, I had just did a TikTok. Check it out. You know what? All these movies seem to be extremely mentally heavy, and I hope he has a good therapist on standby. Jonathan Majors gives me the vibes that he's the type of actor that goes knee-deep into these roles, and all of these characters that he's playing in these upcoming movies seem kind of dark. We need to get him into like a little comedy or a little rom-com or something. I'm a little worried about your friend after these, next couple movies come out. These seem a little on the dark side. But yeah, every single role he was up for was very dark, and I was concerned at the time. But sometimes rejection is redirection. Those may not be the roles that he needs to have tied to his name at this point in time. There's a redemption story in here somewhere. He can bounce back from this. I think a lot of studios view him as a liability today at this point. It's gonna take about a year or two for him to get over this hump. I speculate a lot of studios are in fear of civil litigation after his criminal case. They don't want him to, let's say, be the face of their movie, and then 6 months in, Jonathan Majors is sued by Grace Jabari. I think he can bounce back from this, but he's gonna need some real advocacy from someone in Hollywood. If y'all remember, Robert Downey Jr. had got himself in a bunch of trouble, and the only reason he became Iron Man is because Jon Favreau advocated for him. He advocated for him to the point that he leaked the casting rumor to Twitter to kind of get people talking about it, because the people at Marvel at the time did not want anything to do with Robert Downey Jr. It was so bad that some of the executives potentially came to blows in a meeting, arguing about Robert Downey Jr. being Iron Man. They did not want him nowhere near the role. But he had someone to fight for him and advocate for him. Same with James Gunn. He had a whole crew and cast of people fighting for him to get rehired. If you don't have someone or a few people who's willing to stick their neck out and fight for him, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for him. And that's another reason why we have to support these black movies and these black directors. Because when we don't support these movies and directors and executives, they don't get work anymore. When they don't get work anymore, they can't fight for a Jonathan Majors, a Nate Parker, a Will Smith, a Wesley Snipes. There's someone right now advocating for Will Smith. That's why he's in Bad Boys 4. Someone fought for Wesley Snipes. That's why he ended up in Coming to America 2. So in these movies like The Woman King, The Color Purple, Ava DuVernay has a film coming out called Origins. The Book of Clarence, directed by James Samuel and produced by Jay-Z, is out this weekend. If we are not supporting these movies, these directors, these executives, I think it's mad crazy for us to feel like someone else who's not in our community is gonna want to take the chance on him or anybody else that's ran into a roadblock in their career. I feel like if you pay your debt to society, you should have the ability to go out and make a living for yourself. As long as it's not something too criminal, too crazy, right? Jonathan Majors was convicted of essentially accidentally hurting someone. He deserves another chance. Honestly, if we're keeping it real, what Jonathan Majors did is actually way less egregious than what Will Smith did to Chris Rock. And I'm team Will Smith, but when you look at it in context, that was way crazier. You take Chris Rock off that stage and put a white woman on there, hey, Will Smith might be at Rikers Island right now. So now let's talk about Jonathan Majors and his performance during his interview with ABC. Some people saw that interview and thought he was being not genuine. They thought it was very performative. They thought the tears were fake. And they didn't think anything in the interview was real at all. As someone who has seen a lot of Jonathan Majors interviews or behind the scenes shots of him, I think he is just naturally theatrical. And when you're someone who's naturally over the top, sometimes it can come off as performative, but that's just who he is. I've seen a few interviews where he's broken down into tears for less, honestly. Even if you listen to the Coretta Scott audio, it sounds like he's speaking as if he's He Who Remains. So I disagree with people who felt like that was a performative interview. Of course, some parts he had a little sauce to it, but overall, that's really just who he is and how he acts and how he dresses. I think that's a reflection of him. I don't think it was performative. Now, I do want to talk about the I am a great man conversation. I see a lot of people who are thinking that he has these grandiose ideals about himself. I've seen people say he thinks he's more than what he is. He's not changing the culture. He's not that important, but I disagree.
And you not Martin.
They don't have family. They just started dating 2 months ago.
Y'all are in Hollywood. Y'all act. Like, we got to stop acting like what we do is so important. Like, you're just in the entertainment business.
My mom and my dad poured into my sister and I so much. Every day, they would tell us that we were smart. Not only did they tell us we were smart, they made sure we got our homework done. They made sure we read books. They made sure we believed in higher education. So when you're constantly getting those positive affirmations, you start to really, really believe I'm smart. Like, there's nothing, nobody can tell me, I really think I'm smart. Some people might think that's egotistical. I don't know. That's just what I believe. Now, Jonathan Majors is on the other end of the spectrum, in a sense that if you know anything about his childhood, it was tough for him. He was in and out of trouble as a teenager, and someone took him in and guided him towards theater. It eventually became his thing, and he got so good at it that he ended up in Yale for the arts. He didn't have a consistent father around to tell him, you're great. You're going to be an actor. You're going to be successful. I imagine at some point in his life, he began to tell himself that. Because when you grow up in the type of background that he's came from, that a lot of us has came from, the only way to get to the other side, you have to believe in yourself so much that it may even seem maniacal. So he probably at some point in his life began to tell himself over and over and over, I am a great man. I will be someone. I will be successful. To get to where he got to, there had to be some level of greatness in him, because there's millions of people every year trying to break into Hollywood, and it's so hard to get through that door. So for him to even get to the level of where he was, it's nothing wrong with that man believing that he's great. Now, you take away this case. Let's say this case never happened. Back in 2023, he had Ant-Man, he had Creed, he had Loki, and by the end of the year, he was going to have Magazine Dreams out. If that court case never happened, you would have had people everywhere talking about how great he is. So now that that court case has happened, people are wanting to diminish his light or his talent or what he thinks of himself and say, you're not great. What have you done to feel like you're so impactful, or to feel like you're comparable to Martin Luther King or Obama? I think that's wild, because if that's the people he's looking up to for an example, it's nothing wrong with that. So he has the right to believe he's great, and I hope he continues to believe that he's great. Even if him or you or me or someone was dropping fries at McDonald's and we was the best fry dropper in the district, that fry dropper has the right to believe he's great, because guess what? He might be the greatest fry dropper in the district. That's not for someone on the outside to be like, you ain't great. How are we going to tell someone they not great or they shouldn't believe that they're someone? Like, that's crazy. I don't agree with that. I think he almost needs a high sense of self-worth because it helps balance out some of his extreme lows. So I have no issues. This was a private conversation between him and his girlfriend at the time that unfortunately made it to court and is public. And now people are looking at him in a weird light, like, who do you think you are to say these things or to compare yourself to these great men? Look, let me tell you, some days I wake up and say, what would Beyonce do? I really do. Some days that motivates me because it's like, she's greatness and I want to be great. So sometimes when I don't feel like making these videos, I say, what would Beyonce do? So there's nothing wrong with striving for greatness. I am also glad that Jonathan Majors talked about his mental health in the interview, because for the longest, a lot of people did not believe that those text messages were real when he talked about removing himself from the timeline.
Those symptoms, ideations of removing myself is a thought that I've had, since I was a kid.
Some people thought they were fake. I always knew that they were real because for them to be brought into court, I'm sure those records had to be subpoenas, those phone numbers had to be verified. And if you've seen a lot of his interviews, he's talked about his struggle with depression. And I think it's a fair question when some people say, hey, yo, is something wrong with this dude?
I want to know from Jonathan Majors, is there something wrong with you? Is there something wrong with you? Because it's not just about this situation.
Because the reality is there is something wrong with him. He stated himself that he has been clinically diagnosed with severe depression, and he suffers with ideologies of removing himself. So when we, especially Black people, say, oh, ain't nothing wrong with him, she's the crazy one. We are intentionally dismissing reality. In our culture, we see this so often. When you see someone who may be dealing with mental health issues and we kind of shoo them away or disregard them and say, oh, no, it's nothing wrong. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. And that is dangerous, because if we keep turning our head or we keep saying ain't nothing wrong with them, how do these people get better? If you're sitting home with a stomach virus or the flu and nobody says you should take medicine, how you gonna get better? So if we disregard someone like Jonathan Majors, who you clearly can see there may be something a little wrong, or he's talked about things being wrong, and we as a culture say, oh, there's nothing wrong with him, how is he supposed to get better? So I'm happy to hear that he is taking the necessary steps to get a hold of this. It's going to be a constant battle for him, but it's going to be tough. But at least he was able to speak, put that out into the universe, and hopefully mentally he can start feeling a lot better about himself. I hope there's a silver lining here and a journey to redemption for him. What do y'all think? How do you think he can bounce back from this? Leave your comments below. Peace.